Sometimes there's nothing more satisfying than making your whole table of friends cry. Hello and welcome to Game Tales, our weekly feature where we recite the stories of D&D players and the many goings-on of their adventures. Today's story comes from yours truly. It is set in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and it takes place in a homebrew game based on Ruby. Special thanks to our patrons, Remy Sweet and Of Winter. Do check us out in there. Without further ado, I am the Penitent with College of Lore. This is Game Tales. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe as I tell you the tale of the PvP encounter that made our entire table cry. Okay, so laying some groundwork for this one, the first thing to understand is that there are some major spoilers for Ruby up through Volume 3 here. If you haven't seen Ruby and you want to, go watch the first 3 volumes before coming back here, because this takes place during the fall of Beacon Arc. This is also an AU of a standard D&D game that we've done for a couple iterations here, internally. We adapted it into Ruby's world, so that's why you won't see the color name rule followed, as well as a few other things. The thing to note is that if you're unfamiliar with Ruby and you don't want to go watch it or read a wiki, Ruby is basically a show that revolves around teenagers learning how to combat evil monsters that are kind of suspiciously controlled by a being that isn't really touched on in the first 3 volumes. And they're kind of adventures at this academy, and then the downfall of that academy. So I am playing Kazintra, who is a panther faunus. Faunus in the world are humans with animal traits, who serves the White Fang, which is a pseudo-terrorist organization for faunus, and is their leader's daughter, actually. Her brother, Kor, is also a student, but he certainly thinks she's dead at the start of things. Her semblance, which is kind of her unique power that everyone in the world of Ruby gets, lets her mask herself in people's mind, kind of controlling how she appears. So she can really easily socially stealth herself. She's in this largely to get power that she's never really had, to kind of lead her people, the Faunus, and get herself out from the thumb of her father, who's very abusive and controlling. She is a member of Team Valencia, a team that works for a benefactor employed by Salem, who is the controller of these monsters called Grimm, bent on bringing the school down. Her brother is on Team Candy, which also happens to include her boyfriend, who she eventually, through the course of play, does pull into the fold. There's a third team, whose name escapes me at the moment, which features a few of Kor's childhood friends, including Gwymeth is their name, kind of this right-hand person to Kor, and another girl on the team, Zelena, who is the sister of Gwymeth, who is chosen as the inheritor of the Maiden Powers. To understand Maiden Powers, they are basically this elemental magic control ability that can be passed from young women to young women. It can be acquired by any young woman under 30, specifically who's in the last thoughts of the current maiden as they die. The story progresses fairly normal for Ruby up until the school falls. As I mentioned, Kazintra had pulled her boyfriend, Noble, in, and he was actually somewhat of a double agent, kind of leaking the plots of Team Valencia to his own team and to the headmistress of the school. Much as he wanted not to betray her, he does eventually try to talk her out of it as the date gets closer, and she kind of just hears none of this. The leader of Valencia, whose name is Vasil, who you can hear about a D&D version of him in one of our favorite character discussion videos, is in the Vital Tournament finals. The Vital Tournament is this basically combat festival that celebrates the school year and the students, and it's a tournament arc, essentially. He is actually in the finals against Gwymeth. The ring they're in during this final is rigged to explode, thanks to Team Valencia, and then Grimm attack immediately. Neither Vasil nor Gwymeth are hurt during this, and all 3 of the team members that are not Kazintra have a crisis of conscience as the school starts to basically be destroyed from the inside out. They can't go through the wanton murder and kind of talk amongst themselves about what they should do from here. Kazintra, though, is built different in the worst possible way. A lot of this enfranchisement and abuse that she's been through will kind of do that to you, and she wants the power to change her lot and change things. Noble again tries to stop her, and she just says that she's sorry, and that he's made his choice, and now she's making hers. She goes to the Undercroft of Beacon's Tower, finding Zelena and the headmistress there with the maiden, who is on life support, and they're kind of transferring the power to Zelena through this machine. Kazintra has a sniper rifle as part of her weaponry, and just shoots and kills the maiden, while Zelena's in the machine, and they both absorb roughly half of the power. Zelena flees, and Kazintra kills the headmaster basically because she lets her, understanding this is kind of the end of her road. Kazintra does, after making short work of the headmaster, track Zelena down in this kind of burnt-out building, and jumps her, attacks her, uses all of her arsenal to try to hurt and injure Zelena. And there is a fight scene between myself and the other player where it's straight up just initiative combat. We are trying to kill each other in character. And she asks me, she says, "Why are you doing this?" And Kazintra responds, "Because I'm committed, because this is my one shot at making anything of myself, and because I need this. My people need someone with this power at the top." Notably, Zelena is also a Faunus. So she kind of pauses and she gets on a knee and she says, "You're right. You do need this more than me." And she gives herself up to Kazintra. And Kazintra just kind of stops there for a second. This was weird, and selflessness is something she's not really used to. It almost made her angry. But maybe Zelena did deserve them. Maybe what these powers, what an example for her people should be, was someone this selfless. So Kazintra kind of says, "No," and throws her weapon down. This is exactly why I don't. And she submits herself to Zelena. But Zelena, of course, cannot go through with it and tries to convince Kazintra to do it instead. At this point, because there is almost no way one of them can decide to kill the other, Kor and Gwymeth show up. They find them. And they're briefed on the situation. Kazintra drops her disguise and says hello to her little brother. Kor is taken aback, but he can't make the choice to kill either of them and tells them that they should both just try to coexist. Kazintra kind of puts this idea to bed. She explains that the people that she works for, if you have some of the strength, you will need all of it to survive them. Kor tells her that he can't make this choice, and Kazintra says, "Then you need to let me." Zelena is distraught and beside herself and cannot kill Kazintra at this point. Kor kind of steps forward, resigning himself that he's going to have to kill his sister, who he thought was dead. But Gwymeth puts a hand on his shoulder and just kind of nods. Kazintra sends a message to Noble, understanding what this means, and says, "I love you, I'm sorry." Kor kind of just carries Zelena out and says a quick thank you to Gwymeth as they both head outside. Gwymeth pulls his bow from his back and looks at Kazintra. And they say, "I don't know you, but thank you for letting my sister live." There's a pause as they knock the arrow, and they continue, "You know, he only knew you for a few years, but he speaks very highly of you." Kazintra just kind of mumbles, "I'm glad." And then Gwymeth finishes, "And so will I." We fade to black with the sound of an arrow string, and Kor goes into the night to look for Noble and Team Valencia, and that was the end of Kazintra and the PvP encounter that made our whole table cry. Thank you for watching. If you have any of your own D&D stories, tell us in the comments or email us and we may read them on this feature. Thank you for watching this video from College of Lore. Remember to like this video, subscribe to join the party, and have a fantastic adventure.